Every year, millions of people enter America's national parks, vast stretches of wilderness that remain some of the last truly wild places on the continent. Most come back, some do not. And among those who disappear, a surprising number do so under circumstances so strange, so inexplicable, that they have become the subject of one of the most enduring and debated mysteries in modern outdoor culture, the phenomenon known as Missing 411. The term was coined by David Paulides, a former police detective turned researcher, who began investigating unusual disappearances in national parks and wilderness areas after a chance conversation with a park ranger in the mid-2000s. What he found, or claims to have found, was a pattern so consistent and so baffling that it spawned a series of books, a documentary film, and a devoted online community determined to make sense of what the official record seemingly refuses to explain. The patterns Paulides identified. Paulides cataloged hundreds of cases, pulling from official missing persons reports, search and rescue records, and newspaper archives. What emerged, he argued, wasn't random. Certain features kept appearing across unconnected cases in different parks, different decades, and different demographic groups. Victims frequently disappeared near bodies of water, creeks, lakes, streams, bogs. They were often found, when found at all, at significant distances from where they were last seen, in terrain that would have been extraordinarily difficult for them to traverse on their own. Children, in particular, seemed to turn up miles from their point of last contact, sometimes on the other side of impassable ridgelines. In some cases, highly trained search teams, complete with dogs, swept an area thoroughly before a body or survivor turned up in a location that had already been searched. Clothing was another recurring anomaly. Victims were sometimes discovered with their shoes removed and placed neatly nearby, or with their clothes torn in ways inconsistent with the terrain. In a handful of documented cases, victims were found partially undressed in conditions where hypothermia would have made removing clothing an act of certain death. Weather also seemed to play a role. Many disappearances occurred just before or during sudden storms that hampered search efforts. And the dogs, trained to track human scent, frequently lost the trail abruptly and inexplicably, as though the person had simply ceased to exist at a specific point on the ground. The official explanation. Before diving deeper into the mystery, it's worth acknowledging what conventional wisdom and the scientific community have to say. Because the explanations, while less dramatic, are not without substance. The national park system is enormous. The combined acreage of all U.S. national parks exceeds 85 million acres. Wilderness terrain is dangerous, unpredictable, and unforgiving. People underestimate distances, overestimate their fitness, and make poor decisions, especially in groups, where social dynamics can suppress individual concern. Cognitive impairment. From altitude, dehydration, hypoglycemia, or hypothermia can cause people to behave irrationally, wander off trails, remove clothing, a documented symptom of paradoxical undressing in late-stage hypothermia, and travel in nonsensical directions. Search and rescue professionals point out that people in distress frequently move toward water because they are thirsty, believe water will lead them to civilization, or simply because water drainage systems are natural pathways through terrain. This explains, to a significant degree, why so many victims are found near bodies of water. It also explains why the distances traveled can seem implausible. A disoriented, panicked person can cover surprising ground before collapsing. The failure of search dogs is less easily dismissed. Handlers and trackers acknowledge that scent can be disrupted by rain, wind, water crossings, or the simple passage of time. A trail that goes cold at a stream crossing doesn't imply the paranormal. It implies the person crossed water, which breaks the scent chain. This is standard tracking knowledge. As for the lack of centralized data, Paulides has repeatedly criticized the National Park Service for not maintaining a unified missing persons database, pointing to this absence as suspicious. The NPS has responded that missing persons data is maintained at the federal level through standard law enforcement channels, and that there is no systematic gap. Others have suggested that the apparent clustering of strange cases reflects the sheer volume of visitors rather than an anomalous rate of disappearance. why the mystery endures. And yet the cases keep drawing people in, because some of them genuinely resist easy explanation. Take the case of Dennis Martin, a 6-year-old who vanished in Great Smoky Mountains National Park in 1969. He disappeared in seconds, in broad daylight, while playing a game of sneaking up on his family in a clearing. The search that followed was one of the largest in national park history, involving hundreds of volunteers, military personnel, and Green Berets. His body was never found. A family camping nearby reported hearing an inhuman scream from the woods at the approximate time of his disappearance, followed by what appeared to be a large, dark figure moving through the trees carrying something. No explanation has ever been officially offered. Or consider the 1928 case of Bessie and Glenn Hyde, who vanished while attempting to run the Grand Canyon in a homemade scow. Their boat was found intact, with food and supplies still aboard, drifting at Separation Canyon. Neither body was ever recovered despite the contained geography of the river corridor. Cases like these exist in a frustrating middle ground, too strange to dismiss, too ambiguous to resolve. They invite speculation precisely because the evidence, such as it is, doesn't cleanly support any single conclusion. The theories. In the absence of definitive answers, theories have multiplied. The most mundane propose that the cases Paulides highlights aren't statistically unusual at all, that cherry-picking strange cases from a large database of wilderness disappearances will always produce apparent patterns that don't reflect any underlying cause. This is the base rate problem. If you look hard enough at enough data, you will find coincidences that look like conspiracies. More elaborate theories range from predatory human activity, organized criminal networks, undetected serial killers operating in park environments, to stranger hypotheses involving cryptid animals, dimensional anomalies, and even extraterrestrial involvement. Paulides himself has been careful not to publicly endorse any specific explanation, a position that some find admirably restrained and others find frustratingly evasive. The predatory human hypothesis is taken more seriously than the others. Parks are remote, surveillance is minimal, and visitor patterns can be exploited. Several convicted predators have operated in or near national parks, but the scale and geographic spread of the cases in Paulides' database would require an implausible coordination among perpetrators. What we actually know. What is certain is this: people disappear in wilderness areas at rates that deserve serious attention, and the systems for tracking, investigating, and learning from those disappearances are imperfect. Search and rescue resources are stretched thin. Jurisdictional complexity between federal, state, and local agencies can slow responses and fragment records. It is also certain that some cases, not all, but some, contain details that the available explanations struggle to accommodate. A toddler found alive and coherent 12 miles from his last known location, across 2 mountain ridges with no clear path of travel. A body discovered in a location that had been searched multiple times. Shoes placed side by side in an open field with no sign of their owner for miles in any direction. These cases don't prove anything supernatural, but they do suggest that our understanding of how people move, fail, and disappear in wilderness is incomplete. The wilderness is not a controlled environment. It does not yield its secrets easily, and it does not owe us resolution. The most intellectually honest position is probably the least satisfying one. That some of these cases have ordinary explanations we simply lack the evidence to reconstruct, and that a small number represent genuinely open questions that current knowledge cannot close. What Missing 411 has accomplished, whatever one makes of Paulides' methods or conclusions, is to force a public conversation about wilderness safety, missing persons data, and the limits of our certainty when people walk into wild places and do not come back. That conversation, serious, evidence-grounded, and humbled by what we don't know, is worth having. The parks are beautiful. They are also, in ways we haven't fully mapped, profoundly strange. If you enjoy content like this and want to see more videos every week, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload.